Hello and welcome to another Hot Pixel Productions tutorial video. My name is Gerald Berliner, and in this quick tutorial what I'm going to do is to show you how we can take a visible light image straight out of camera, just shot with my Nikon D810, and convert it to replicate or simulate infrared false color aesthetic. So what we're going to be doing is going from this and eventually ending up with something like this. So let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do is come up to the layer. I'm just going to click on it to unlock it, and I'm going to duplicate this layer by pressing Command or Control if you're on a PC, J. So Command J in order to duplicate that layer. Now what I'm going to do is come up to its blending mode and switch over from normal to overlay. I'm going to drop the opacity of this layer down to about, let's say, around about 50%. No hard and fast rules here on any specific number. It really is just driven by the scene and the image that you'd be working with. Okay, that's great. So that's down to around about 50% in terms of its opacity. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the little half and half cookie at the bottom of the layers panel, and I am going to throw on a channel mixer. Now what I'm going to do with the channel mixer, I'm just going to click on the monochrome button here to turn it to black and white or monochrome. And now here begins a little bit of experimentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start to drag the red up to around about 100 for now. I'm going to increase the green to around about 69. And now I'm actually going to pull the blues down to around about minus 70, I think could be quite good. Okay, I think I'm just going to need to just bring up the green just a little bit. And yeah, I think that's looking pretty good now. So I've kind of netted out around about 90, plus 90 on the red, about plus 80 on the green, and around about minus 75 on the blue. Now what I'm going to do is click on the channel mixer layer, and I'm actually going to drag it between the two color layers. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the uppermost layer at the top here, and I'm now going to throw on a hue saturation layer. Now within the hue saturation layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the master drop down dialog box here, and when I click on it, I'm going to just target the yellows here. Now in order to do the color shifting, what I'm going to do is come up to the hue slider here, not the saturation slider, the hue slider, and begin to just pull it left and right and see what starts to happen. As you can see, the hue slider is just targeting the yellows as we've selected those in the dialog box above. And from here on, it really is just purely experimental and really down to your own particular individual aesthetic taste. So we're pulling it over more towards the magenta end. It's going very, very green. Bringing it back to the center, it's kind of a goldy sort of pink. I think I'm just going to probably net out around about there, around about minus 50 on the yellow for the hue. And now what I'm going to do is just going to come down and target the blues. And to bring that to the left, you can start to see we're getting kind of more of a turquoisey teal. It's kind of interesting, to say the least, but I think I actually prefer it with that slightly more subtle muted blue. So I'm going to leave that around about, I'd say about plus 6 there on that. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. So what I can maybe do now is to maybe give it a little bit more punch, so maybe add another hue saturation there and just possibly boost those colors just a tad. And would it go too crazy? For my own personal sense, I prefer it when it's just really more kind of almost like more of a subtle tint rather than kind of very, very aggressively saturated. So I'm just going to bring that up to around about plus 10. That's kind of good. Now, another part of the infrared aesthetic, you can see a lot in the photography, is it's kind of an ethereal glow around the edges within the image itself. Now, in order to replicate and achieve that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a stamp composite of all the layers above the base layer here. Now, in order to do that, I'm just going to click on the top layer and click on the bottom layer above the base layer to select all of them. And I'm going to press the Command Option Shift key on a Mac, or the Control Alt Shift key on a PC, and just tap the E key. And what that's done, as I say, is given us a composite of all the layers beneath it and just placed in its own individual layer at the top there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over under filter, and I'm going to come down to blur, and I'm going to come down to Gaussian blur. And usually I think that around about 40% is a pretty good place to start. So I'm just going to click OK to accept that. And now what I'm going to do is on this uppermost layer, I'm now going to go to the opacity layer and bring its opacity down to around about anywhere between sort of like 15 to 20%. And again, you know, could be down to your own particular taste. You could maybe make it a little bit more visible. But again, I just tend to, that's what's this, is around about 30%. You can kind of see that kind of ethereal bloom around everything. But I think I'm just going to cool that off a bit and take that down to around about 20%. So that's pretty good. Okay, and so maybe what I might do now, I may take a look at adding a levels adjustment layer to see whether or not maybe we can bring a little bit more punch and contrast in by just pulling down the midtones a fraction. And just bring up the white point just a little bit, just to bring a little bit more contrast back in there. From here on in, what you could maybe do, let's look at our, this was our original hue balance we were looking at. So let's just turn that off. And you can see it actually looks quite nice as it is. But if you want to maybe experiment a little bit more, let's just put on another hue saturation layer above that. And we can do the same thing with this. We'll go down to the master, and I'm going to go and target the yellows again, and maybe we'll do a different shift where I'm going to pull a little bit more to the right, and I'll make that a little bit more green, or just dial in a little bit more of those kind of gold yellows, and then come down to the blues, target the blues, and maybe just pull that across a little bit to the left, just to bring in a little bit more of a kind of a turquoisey feel around about -23. So you could either go for that, or you could go for this. So let me just click on this, these layers, and go Command G to put them into a group. And so this is where we started, and this is where we've ended up. So my friends, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Very quick little tutorial this time. But as I say, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next go round. Bye for now.